Hello everyone, welcome back to Dugout Daily. I'm Charlie and today we have another video. This time we are previewing the match where reigning champions Manchester City travel to the American Express Stadium to face Brighton on Thursday night as we seek to climb back to the Premier League summit. Before we get going, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Dugout Daily, the football channel, hit the Apex the F1 channel and at MCFC Hibs on Twitter. We will get going then, and the two teams meet for the first time since the end of October last year when the Citizens survived a late Seagulls fight back to claim a 2-1 win at the Etihad Stadium. We will start with the Premier League form of both teams, as Brighton are winless in 4 Premier League games and 5 of their last 6, as their run in the Premier League has been a loss, a win, a loss, a draw, a loss, and a draw. Manchester City are unbeaten in our last 6 Premier League matches, with that run being a win, 2 draws, and 3 wins. Last time out then, Brighton travelled to Burnley and drew 1-1 on Saturday, April the 13th at 3 o'clock in the Premier League. And Manchester City beat Chelsea 1-0 at Wembley on Saturday at 5:15 in the FA Cup. Brighton have scored 52 goals in the Premier League this season, while Manchester City have scored 76. We will move on to the head-to-head then, and we'll start on October the 23rd, 2021 at 5:30 as it finished Brighton 1, Manchester City 4, as Gundogan opened the scoring in the 13th minute before Foden scored in the 28th and 31st minutes. McAllister made it 3-1 from the penalty spot in the 81st minute, while Mahrez made it 4-1 in the 95th minute. Mulder and Lallana were booked for Brighton in the 63rd and 70th minutes, as Walker, Cancelo and Ederson were booked for Manchester City in the 22nd, 60th and 84th minutes. The next meeting between these two then was on April the 20th, 2022 at 8 p.m. as it finished Manchester City 3, Brighton 0. Mahrez, Foden and Silva scored for City in the 53rd, 65th and 82nd minutes, as McAllister, Webster and Dunk were booked for Brighton in the 79th, 81st and 89th minutes. We then met again on October the 22nd, 2022 at 3 p.m. as Haaland scored a brace in the 22nd and 43rd minute, with the second one being a penalty. Trossard then got one back for Brighton in the 53rd minute as De Bruyne scored in the 75th minute. And then we met on May the 24th, 2023 at 8 p.m. as it finished Brighton 1, Manchester City 1. Foden opened the score for City in the 25th minute as Enciso scored for Brighton in the 38th minute. Veltman and Paul van Hecke were booked for Brighton in the 89th and 91st minutes, as Silva and Guardiola were booked in the 41st and 83rd minutes for Manchester City. And earlier on this season, on October the 21st, 2023 at 3 p.m, it finished Manchester City 2, Brighton 1, as Alvarez scored in the 7th minute for City. Braut Haaland scored in the 19th minute. Fati got one back for Brighton to make it 2-1 in the 73rd minute. Rodri, Akanji and Grealish were booked in the 38th, 63rd and 84th minutes for Manchester City, as March and Julio were booked in the 36th and 64th minutes for Brighton. Akanji got a 95th minute red card. We will move on to the form then for both sides, and Brighton are winless in their last 4 games, with their run being a 1-0 win at home to Nottingham Forest. They then beat Roma at home 1-0, lost 2-1 away at Liverpool, drew 0-0 away at Brighton, lost 3-0 at home to Arsenal, and drew 1-1 away at Burnley. Their 2 wins from their last 6 were both 1-0 wins at home. Manchester City have lost 1 of our last 6 matches, with our run being a 4-1 win at home to Aston Villa, a 4-2 win away to Crystal Palace, a 3-3 draw away to Real Madrid, a 5-1 win at home to Luton, a 4-3 loss on penalties at home to Real Madrid after a 1-1 draw, and a 1-0 win at Wembley against Chelsea. We will move on to Manchester City's top scorer then. And of course, it's Erling Haaland. He scored 20 goals in the Premier League and 33 in all competitions. His last league goal was at home to Luton on Saturday, April the 13th. He scored 4 braces and a hat-trick this season. We will move on to the match preview then, and amidst all the uncertainty over the future of head coach Roberto De Zerbi as well as their continuous injury woes, Brighton's form has taken a nosedive since the turn of the year and they find themselves playing catch-up in the race to secure European football for next season. Just 3 wins have been posted across their 13 Premier League games of 2024, and they've failed to come out on top in any of their last 4 matches, most recently rescuing a point in a 1-1 draw at relegation-threatened Burnley just over a week ago. A calamitous own goal from Claret's keeper Arijanet Muric restored parity for the Seagulls just 5 minutes after Josh Brownhill had given the hosts a 74th minute lead, and the draw for Brighton represents their 11th in the top flight this season, which is at least 2 more than any other team in the division. After securing 6th last season, which is their highest ever Premier League finish, Brighton currently sit 10th with 6, as they are 6 points behind 7th place Manchester United and 6th place Newcastle with 6 games to play. They have now in fact dropped to 11th in the table as Bournemouth moved ahead of them with last night's 1-0 win away at Wolves. They are now 6 points off 7th place Newcastle after they lost 2-0 at Crystal Palace last night, and they are 9 points off 6th place Manchester United after their 4-2 win at home to Sheffield United last night. With 4 of their remaining 6 league matches on home soil, Brighton will welcome a return to the Amex where they've only lost 1 of their last 15 in all competitions, which is a 3-0 defeat to Arsenal in their most recent home outing on April 6th. Success on Thursday could prove challenging for the Seagulls as they've lost 11 of their last 13 Premier League encounters with Manchester City, although the 4 points that they collected during this run have come across their last 3 home games with the Citizens, including a solitary point claimed in a 1-1 draw last season, a game in which Julio Enciso scored a long-range screamer that was voted goal of the season. 3 days after our heartbreaking Champions League exit on penalties to Real Madrid, Manchester City secured our spot in the FA Cup final for a second successive year after edging past Chelsea 1-0 at Wembley Stadium on Saturday. Chelsea were made to rue a host of missed chances and the visibly jaded Citizens outfit snatched victory 6 minutes from time when Bernardo Silva's deflected strike squeezed in at the near post to ensure that the holders remain on course for another domestic double, which sets a new unbeaten club record in the process. Another Manchester Derby FA Cup final awaits Pep Guardiola's side on May the 25th, but we must first shift our attention back to the Premier League title race. The Citizens have slipped to 3rd in the table after both Arsenal and Liverpool won at the weekend, and the Gunners moved 4 points clear at the top with victory over Chelsea on Tuesday, but City have crucially got 2 games in hand. Manchester City, who are bidding to win an unprecedented 4th Premier League title in a row, have put together a club record 42-game unbeaten run at the Etihad Stadium in all competitions, but we're now gearing up for 4 away league matches in our next 5, including Thursday's trip to Brighton. The only 2 times that City have failed to beat the Seagulls in the Premier League have interestingly come in a midweek game at the Amex, as we lost 3-2 in May 2021 on a Tuesday, and the aforementioned 1-1 draw in May 2023 on a Wednesday. It's worth saying that both those games we were already Premier League champions. Guardiola and co will be confident of success on Thursday as we've won 17 of our last 19 midweek Premier League fixtures, while we've accumulated 19 points from a possible 21 available across our last 7 away games. We've also scored in all 13 top flight meetings with Brighton, and we only facing Bournemouth on more occasions with a 100% scoring record of 14. We will move on to the Brighton team news then, as they will have to cope without Solly March, who has a knee injury, Cairo Matoma, who has a back injury, Jack Hinchelwood, who has a foot injury, James Milner, who has a thigh injury, Tariq Lamptey, who has a muscle injury, Billy Gilmore, who has a knee injury, Evan Ferguson, who has an ankle injury, and Purvis Estupiñán, who has a calf injury. He's been rolled out for the rest of the season after picking up his injury against Burnley last time out. Encito will have a knock assessed ahead of kick-off, while De Zerbi has confirmed defender Adam Webster's available to return to the squad, although both Lewis Dunk and Jan-Paul van Hecke could continue in the heart of defence. Igor Julio or Valentin Barco, who was linked with Manchester City in January before joining the Seagulls, could slot in at left back in the absence of Estupiñán, while Ansu Fati, who scored in the reverse fixture at the Etihad, will battle with the likes of Simon Adingra, Facundo Buonanotte, Adam Lallana and Joe Pedro for a starting attack. So the predicted team for Brighton then is for Bruggen in goal, Veltman, Van Hecke, Dunk and Igor as a back four, with Gross and Baleba in midfield, Adingra, Lallana and Pedro behind Welbeck in attack. We will move on to the Manchester City team news then, as two key Manchester City players were absent from first team training ahead of Thursday's Premier League trip to Brighton. The Citizens bounced back from our Champions League exit on penalties to Real Madrid by beating Chelsea 1-0 on Saturday to progress to our second successive FA Cup final, courtesy of a late goal from Bernardo Silva. Pep Guardiola's men have put together a club record 29-game unbeaten run in all competitions and remain on course to end the season with the same domestic double that we won last season. A Manchester Derby FA Cup final awaits City on May the 25th, but we're now focused fully on the Premier League title race, with just a point separating the Citizens in third from second place Liverpool, and Arsenal are 4 points clear with 6 games to play. Manchester City will pay a visit to European hopefuls Brighton on Thursday, but Guardiola's sweating over the fitness of 2 of his key players ahead of the contest at the American Express Stadium. Manchester City took part in an open training session at the City Football Academy on Tuesday morning, but both Erling Haaland and Phil Foden weren't pictured out on the grass with their teammates. Haaland was a notable absentee from the Citizens side that edged past Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-final last weekend after he failed to recover in time from a niggling muscle injury. The Norwegian picked up his problem in City's Champions League clash with Real Madrid last week, and Guardiola stated that the striker has to be taken off before the Citizens lost on penalties. Haaland has scored 31 goals in 39 games for Manchester City across all competitions so far this season, as well as 3 goals in as many appearances against Brighton. But the 23-year-old has emerged as a doubt for Thursday's clash, along with the inform attacker Foden. The Englishman, who's arguably City's player of the season so far, sustained a knock in a first leg tie against Real Madrid earlier this month, and although he featured in the reverse fixture with Los Blancos, he's watched on as an unused sub in each of the last 2 Premier League games. On a positive note, Manchester City were boosted by the news of John Stones taking part in first team training on Tuesday. The versatile defender has had his minutes managed by Guardiola since recovering from a groin injury earlier this month. Stones was left out of the Citizens squad that beat Luton 5-1 in the Premier League, but he came on as a late sub in extra time against Real Madrid in the Champions League last week, before playing the first 45 minutes against Chelsea in the FA Cup. Meanwhile, there were brief concerns over Julian Alvarez after he wasn't spotted by the cameras on Sky Sports News in first team training, but reporter Anton Tulowi has since confirmed that the Argentine began training after they finished filming. Jack Grealish came off with a knock against Chelsea and also took part in first team training, as did Bernardo Silva, who admitted after last weekend's Wembley win that he was feeling his left hamstring and right calf. Guardiola is due to provide an update on the fitness of his Manchester City squad when he attends a pre-match press conference on Wednesday ahead of the trip to Brighton. Pep Guardiola has confirmed that Manchester City striker Erling Haaland will miss Thursday's Premier League clash away against Brighton. Haaland was a notable absentee from the Citizens team that secured a slender 1-0 win over Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-finals last weekend after he failed to recover in time from a niggling muscle injury. The 23-year-old sustained his problem in City's Champions League quarter-final encounter with Real Madrid last week, and Guardiola revealed after the match that the striker requested to be taken off before his side lost on penalties. Haaland was absent from an open training session at the City Football Academy on Tuesday along with Phil Foden, which raised concerns over the availability for Thursday's trip to the American Express Stadium. Guardiola has since issued a mixed update on the fitness of his first team squad, confirming that he's unable to call upon his leading marksman. Speaking at a press conference on Wednesday, Guardiola said Erling's not ready for tomorrow. The other two, which are Foden and John Stones, are ready. It's not a big issue, but he's not available, the Catalan added with regards to Haaland. Amidst City's hectic fixture schedule, City have only had a few days to rest and recover from our FA Cup semi-final win last Saturday, and 2 Premier League games in the space of just 3 days against Brighton and Nottingham Forest are up next. Guardiola has refused to rule out the possibility of rotating his squad where possible in the final few weeks of the season, and has insisted that every member of his squad have a role to play as the Citizens endeavour to win a domestic double. Every player deserves to play, said Guardiola. Everyone has their starting 11 or favourite players, but everyone has their contribution. We have had 3 or 4 days since the last game against Chelsea. Haaland may not have reached the remarkable goal-scoring numbers he achieved last season, but the Norwegian still boasts an impressive 31 goals from 39 appearances in all competitions so far this season, highlighting his importance in the final third for Guardiola's side. City's number 9 has netted 3 times in many appearances against Brighton, including a goal in a 2-1 win in the reverse fixture at the Etihad Stadium earlier this season. However, in his absence, Julian Alvarez is expected to lead the line for the Citizens, as the Argentine has contributed with 16 goals and 13 assists in 48 games for Manchester City this season, including a strike in the aforementioned win over Brighton, although he hasn't scored in any of his last 10 Premier League outings. Meanwhile, Foden will hope to retain his starting spot in attack pending a late fitness check, and will look to add to his 22 goals scored so far this season. Only Haaland with 31 has netted more for City than the Englishman, with Alvarez third on the list. Foden will fancy his chances of making the net ripple on Thursday, as he scored 6 in his previous 9 meetings with Brighton, including 4 strikes in his last 3 visits to the Amex. Manchester City currently sit third in the Premier League table and 4 points behind leaders Arsenal, who thrashed Chelsea 5-0 on Tuesday. But Guardiola's men have 2 games in hand and can move to within a point of the summit with victory over Brighton. Having experienced the highs and lows of knockout football, Manchester City returned to Premier League matters with a trip to Brighton on Thursday evening. After losing our grip on the Champions League crown against Real Madrid in the quarter-finals, Pep Guardiola's side made the FA Cup showpiece thanks to a 1-0 win over a wasteful Chelsea on Saturday. While reveling in our Wembley exploits, the Premier League champions, who will face Manchester United in a repeat of last year's FA Cup final, have slipped to third in the table behind Liverpool and Arsenal, but our title fate still lies in our own hands. After being forced to leave the field against Real Madrid with some niggles, Erling Haaland was absent from the squad for the FA Cup semi-final. Guardiola admitted at Wembley that he wasn't sure if the Golden Boot winner would be back for Brighton, but he ought to provide another update when he faces the media later this week. He has since confirmed that he's out for tonight's match. John Stones was a half-time withdrawal in the weekend's win over Chelsea, and it's now believed that the Englishman was subbed due to fitness issues, making him a slight doubt for the Brighton game. Similarly, Jack Grealish, who was furious at the referee's failure to send Moises Caicedo off, was subbed midway through the second half due to a knock, and it remains to be seen whether he's risked at the Annex. Manchester City will be without star striker Erling Haaland for Thursday's Premier League trip to Brighton. Haaland has been nursing a niggling muscle issue picked up in City's Champions League clash with Real Madrid last week prior to the penalty shootout loss, and he was forced to miss last Saturday's 1-0 win over Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-finals. The Norwegian was then a notable absentee from first-team training on Tuesday, and Guardiola has since confirmed the striker won't be involved against the Seagulls. However, Guardiola has issued a positive update on John Stones and Phil Foden, as the latter missed training along with Haaland on Tuesday, but the attacker's in contention to play on Thursday along with Stones, who has had his minutes managed since recovering from a groin injury. Bernardo Silva, who scored the winning goal against Chelsea last weekend, revealed after the match that he was feeling his left hamstring and right calf, so the playmaker's set to be assessed ahead of kick-off, as is linchpin Rodri, who recently admitted he could do with a well-earned rest, but both players trained on Tuesday. Stones and Ruben Diaz, who played a half each in defence against Chelsea, could link arms at centre-back, while Josko Vardio may replace Nathan Ake at left-back after watching on as an unused sub last time out. First-choice keeper Ederson's expected to replace Stefan Ortega between the sticks, while Kyle Walker should be fit to start his third successive match at right-back since recovering from a hamstring injury. Rico Lewis is waiting in the wings should his services be required. Mateo Kovacic could be called upon to start alongside Rodri in central midfield, while Kevin De Bruyne is expected to retain his place in the final third. Julian Alvarez is also poised to start in the absence of Haaland, but Jack Grealish, who has shaken off a knock sustained against Chelsea, could make way for Jeremy Doku on the left. So the predicted team for Manchester City is Ederson in goal, Walker, Stones, Diaz and Vardiol as a back four, with Rodri and Kovacic in midfield, Foden, De Bruyne and Doku behind Alvarez in attack. And finally then we will move on to our prediction, as Brighton have had over a week to rest and prepare for Thursday's important fixture as they endeavour to boost their European hopes, but their depleted squad will still have a tricky task on their hands in quelling the threat of title-chasing Manchester City, who can ill afford to drop points at this late stage of the season. Goals are to be expected as the net has rippled at least 3 times in 8 of our last 10 Premier League meetings between the two clubs, but City boast the superior head-to-head and will be regarded as firm favourites, even without the presence of Haaland against an out-of-sorts Seagulls outfit. So my prediction is Brighton 0, Manchester City 3. So that is it for this video then. Everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Dugout Daily, the football channel. Hit the Apex, the F1 channel. And at MCFC Hips on Twitter. Everybody, thank you all so much for watching. And we'll speak to you all soon. Take care and goodbye for now. Cheers, everyone.